Good morning. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome into 104.3 The Fans Coffee Break. I'm paying my punishment. I look a little crazy. I was trying to do my phone and I'm going all over the place. But DMAC, Rachel Veal hanging out with you as we've got a fun one. DMAC, I'm so tired. I don't know about you, but last night was a party at Ball Arena as the Avs won 5-2 over the Chicago Blackhawks. But the game really wasn't the big part of the night. It was the celebration and the raising of the banner. It was so emotional. And it was such a cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, you were there with me, and I had, I probably should say specifically why I got so emotional for your vlog. Good tease for your vlog. But I got very, very emotional. It had some deep personal meaning. And you know what? Check out Rachel's vlog about it. Yep. Good tease for your vlog. And because I feel weird expressing it right now you got the real reaction.
I did.
But to say it was emotional is an understatement. And the moment that just got me was when Jack Johnson came out in his Blackhawks uniform to drape his arms around his brothers forever as they put their arms around each other, which of course is unscripted. They don't think that out. That just happens. And there you go with the banner in front of the cup.
And you can see Jack Johnson, obviously, in the white sweater down there.
Yeah. You know what it was, Rachel? It was the end of a months long of celebrations. And it was saying goodbye. And the cup, the banner gets raised. And as it goes and the cup is presented for you for the last time to celebrate with, it is a passing of the moment. And now time to truly turn the page. But this was it. So it was very emotional because you worked so hard to get that, and then you celebrate it. And just like everything in life, you actually have to move on one way or the other. So it's tears of absolute joy and sadness about what this journey was like together. And I think as they draped their arms around each other, it's a moment that we all sort of embraced because we all went on this particular journey. And I got incredibly emotional. I thought it was just so superbly done and presented. Yeah. And then the piece de resistance was to show the true brotherhood, because here's Jack Johnson on another team you're playing and that team's uniform uniting with his friends forever. I think the moment could have been a little bit better, Rachel, in all honesty, if that was the Calgary Flames and it was Nazem Kadri who kind of came out with them. That moment will sort of happen tonight up in Calgary. But I'm not being picky, because I think Jack Johnson had an important role. I just don't think it was the same as Nazem Kadri. I think Kadri just, meant a little bit more. Also, Rachel, real quick, you know what hit me? When Gabe Landeskog, who's not playing, by the way, was in full uniform, he was carrying the cup around the ice. And I'm sitting there, and I was so lucky to be in Tampa when they all got a chance to do that. But when I'm watching, I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time on Avs ice that you get to walk around with the cup over your head.
I know.
And I'm like, holy cow, what a moment to be at, because we did not get that moment as a community in Game 5 because the Lightning won. So top to bottom, Rachel, I'm curious what your thoughts are, but I was just blown away by the whole thing. I'm so happy I was there in person. I got very, very emotional. I bet I wasn't the only one shedding some tears. I thought it was one of the more memorable sports moments of my life.
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. You kind of hit all the little pieces that I was going to touch on, but I was wondering too if Gabe was going to do anything. And when they called out the captain, the last person to go out on the ice, you knew in that moment that it just meant so much for this team too. And the fact that he is hurt, he's not playing, but he's still suited up. He went out there, he brought it around the ice for everybody at Ball Arena. It was such a cool experience. And then actually watching it get lifted to be with the other two banners. It was so cool. The crowd was electric. There it is. 1996, 2001, and 2022. Straight goosebumps, Clint said in the comments. I'm totally with you. One memory, I don't think I will ever forget. And Oh, let's do it again because now I'm ready. I've been watching all the hype videos and I'm like, all right, like let's go. Let's do this thing again. And this Avs team, they got a real good shot at doing it again.
Yeah, and the game, I was wondering how these guys even get it together to play, because it was so crazily emotional.
Yep.
And, I think there could have been a more competitive game if you had a better team in town, but maybe that was the right team. I mean, it was great to have Jack Johnson there, and then you wiped him off the face of the earth. And really, it should have been like 3-0 in the first 10 minutes. They were just missing opportunities. They totally dominated Chicago, and they scored 4 power play goals, and the power play looked, insanely good. You got Mikko Rantanen with 4 goals. Lehkonen and Val both had 2 goals. McKinnon and Makar were on the board. I mean, all your big stars contributed last night, and Georgiev barely had to face anything. And the 2 goals scored on him. Maybe on the first goal, he was a little out of position, but it was a power play goal. And the second goal was just an incredible goal by Chicago. I mean, that's going to happen. So, overall, I thought it was an incredible night top to bottom. It is wild, Rachel, that after the game, there was a big push to let's go. Because we got to hop on a plane and go to Calgary where they play tonight and they face Nazem Kadri. So we have moved on. It's Rachel. It's happened. It is over. 81 more to go. They're 1-0, and we can finally put happily, sadly, put to bed the most amazing season most of us have ever gone through from top to bottom. Take a deep breath. Here we go again.
I know. I'm so excited. Tonight's game will be a true test. I think last night's game, they get the win 5-2, but it was very much they were slightly off, but the chemistry is still very much there. They didn't have to play playoff hockey style. It was a little more laid back. You saw them miss a few passes to each other and such, but the power play still dominated. They were still bad at faceoffs, D-Bag. We talked about that last night. They're still not a good faceoff team. But I think give it some time, not an emotional night. We're going to see a lot of really good things for this Avs team, even with the missing pieces like Nazem Kadri, who they will, like you mentioned, see tonight.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Rachel, they're just flat out better. So even on an off night for the Avalanche, they're going to win most of those games too. They just might not win them in the convincing fashion you might want to or expect. But grinding out wins in the NHL is huge. Yeah. And I think you're going to see a lot of games this year, just like you saw last night, where they kind of just go along, but then they get power play opportunities, and that's where their unbelievable talent on both lines of the power play will really shine. And I thought you saw defensively what they do really well too, because the shots on Georgie were mostly from a far distance and wide open. He didn't have to do anything spectacular. It was fun that the crowd started like Georgie.
They're with him, man. They're with him. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. And I talk about pressure because the guys that weren't on the team did not go to they didn't skate from the bench to where the banner raising was happening. They stayed back on the bench because they weren't part of that team. Well, what an intimidating first game. Like, you're the goalie. You got a huge role here, and you were not part of all that stuff, and the backup goalie was. Yeah. And it was interesting that they did start Georgie last night. They could have started Francouz. They would have won the game with Pavel Francouz just as well as Georgie, but they wanted to establish, no, he's our guy. That's what we're doing. Yep. You could have easily started Francouz last night and started Georgie tonight, and then Georgie could have started the next 3 or 4 games. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But they did want to establish that, no, he's our guy. This is his role. And okay, just sort of get over it. He didn't face a lot of very difficult shots. He did not have to play spectacular. And these are reasons why goalies all of a sudden are superstars with the Avalanche. But, Rachel, don't get me wrong. There will be crunch time where he needs to step up and play fantastic. Last night wasn't one of them.
No, agreed. All right. Well, we do have to bring in somebody who had the opportunity, much like you did, DMAC, to cover the team last year in all of the glories. And I'm actually very excited for him. Peter, I lost a bet. We both
Oh,
survivor pool, so don't mind my headgear here. I look a little crazy. But first of all, how are you?
I'm well. I like the headgear. It looks great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I feel a little weird because I'm like having to go like this to see everybody, but it's all part of the game. But Peter, you had the awesome opportunity to cover the team last year. An emotional roller coaster of so many things, but you're actually able to be writing a book about it. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're writing?
Yeah, so the book comes out November 29th, which it's exciting. Yeah, it's just kind of an inside look at the Avs journey to winning a Stanley Cup and kind of how the team was built, the pieces that were made to, or the pieces that were put in place to kind of get it there, and yeah, it should be exciting stuff. And I'm
oh.
Looks like we might have lost Peter.
Well, hey, let me just tell you this about Peter, and hopefully we can get him back here in a second. See, this is usually what happens to me, right? This is where I usually, screw up and let you down, Rachel.
Yeah.
Peter is an extraordinary writer and unbelievable insider. And hey, Peter was so kind to me last year as I was kind of really getting more heavy duty into covering the team. I've covered hockey for a long time, but it was a long time since I was that deep into it. And Peter was just so kind, amazing. And there was a kind of a relatively small crew, Rachel, that was at everything. There was really like 8 or 9 people that were seriously all the games in Edmonton and St. Louis and Nashville and Tampa. And so I'd like to think that the bond amongst the Muggles that were lucky enough to be on that journey, I put my arms around those people as the banner goes up. I mean, I have so many great memories of all those people, including Peter, by the way, who has nothing but my utmost respect. I can't wait to read his book. Cannot wait to read it.
There will be so many good stories and a little tidbit that comes out of it. He did let me know that his Wi-Fi went out, so he's going to try to reconnect. So hopefully we can get him. But
there
back.
he is.
Peter,
hey. So sorry, some Wi-Fi difficulties.
Hey, Peter, I was just telling Rachel how there was maybe 8 or 9 of us that were kind of at everything during the playoff run. And I felt there was a connection between all of us that were on that particular journey together. Because last night to me, it felt like such a family, like when Jack Johnson came up there. And it just felt like how we were all connected to that team. And of course, you try to be objective as a journalist. But I think collectively covering something so amazing bonded all of us together. And I was just telling Rachel how talented you are and how appreciative I was for how kind you were towards me on that particular journey. And I thought we had a great time together. And Peter's got such a great sense of humor. One of the more memorable moments is when he bought like what he viewed as a cowboy hat in Nashville. And Nathan McKinnon sort of gave him a hard time about it. But the hat became kind of a symbol of the entire journey. It was so wonderful.
Yeah, we had a ton of fun together. And yeah, it's like you remain objective as a reporter, but I think you can take a step back and realize what you're witnessing is really cool. And yeah, it was really special. And I'm very, thankful for the whole ride.
Peter, for you, what was your favorite moment?
Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, like the covering the on ice celebration after they won was so cool. Like just being able to talk to so many people and kind of, it's really fun to talk to people who've just accomplished something and they were so happy and so proud of themselves. And that was really special. So I think that definitely jumps out to me.
I think from a storyline point of view, and I can't wait to read your perspective in the book, was what Nazem Kadri went through in St. Louis.
Yeah.
From which was not the happiest of stories, obviously, because they're racist death threats. But that moment that it happened, the reaction to it, the clumsy reaction from Craig Berube, the coach of the Blues, to Nazem Kadri scoring a hat trick. And you factor in Binnington throwing a water bottle at him. The drama that was just in those moments, Peter, to me was, well, I think that's almost movie worthy or book worthy by itself.
Yeah. And that series was, a pretty incredible series in itself. I mean, that Blues team was no joke, and the Avs, they gave the Avs everything they could handle. And I think that like those 2 games were packed with storylines. Kadri putting up that hat trick was pretty unbelievable, especially considering what he had just gone through, and the way he kind of came out the way he did was so impressive. And then and then you go to game 5 where you have McKinnon's incredible goal, but the Avs can't hang on. And then you have game 6 where that game's 5 seconds from going to overtime, but Darren Helm has essentially what was the overtime, the equivalent of an overtime winner.
Right.
And suddenly that second round burden is off their back. And it was an incredible series. That one, I mean, obviously the Stanley Cup was an incredible series too, but that was, in my mind, as good of one.
It's
Agreed.
funny because against the Lightning, it felt like that was, well, besides Nashville, but it was just like the least exciting series that we really had, which you were expecting it to be like full of so much emotion, but because of the 2 series prior, there was already so much emotion. So it was just such a wild ride when you go back and you think about every single game that led up to those 16 wins for this team. I'm so excited to read your book, Peter, but we have to look ahead now as we go for this next year, right? To try and do it all over again. Who are you thinking will have the biggest step up in terms of performance for this upcoming season?
Yeah, well, I mean, and last night, obviously, he had a big game. Arturi Lehkonen, I think, is a guy who I think we're going to continue to see more production out of. I think he's a perfect fit in the Avs system style of play. He's a guy who's proven he's capable of playing with top end talent. He can play with the McKinnons and Rantanens and keep up with them skill wise and speed wise. And then he just does all the little things right, goes to the dirty areas and gets greasy goals. And he's someone who was a solid player in Montreal, but I think now is a kind of a time where he could really emerge as like a very, very, very good player who's maybe not one of the superstars on the team, but is definitely part of the core for years to come. So I'm really excited to see how he does this year.
He's a name I'm definitely keeping my eye on too. From the new guys that are coming in, who intrigues you the most?
Yeah, well, Georgiev is the fascinating one. I mean, this is a guy who's always had a lot of potential as a goalie, has never had the chance to start. This is kind of his opportunity, and it's a big opportunity. I mean, he's coming into a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations again, and last night I thought he looked okay. And we'll see kind of how he does throughout the season, especially as he gets more adjusted. But that's about as important a position as there is on the ice rink. And he's all of a sudden thrust in there for the defending Stanley Cup champs. So it'll be really interesting to see him, I think.
Yeah, and we'll see how Evan Rodriguez sort of fits into things. I think some people thought, oh, he's going to be the replacement for Kadri, but in all honesty, the Avalanche want Alex Newhook to be the replacement for Kadri. That's what they'd like to have happen, and they're going to give him a fair shot at it. So it'll be fascinating to see that. Also, I can't wait to see Valery Nichushkin just take it to another level. I mean, he's already an amazingly dominant player, but I think he's poised to have a remarkable year, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, Nichushkin's fascinating. I think if he can replicate or come close to replicating his offensive production from last year, then that contract is well worth it just because of what he brings on the defensive end of things. In terms of replacing Kadri, I think you're not going to replace him. Right. Alex Newhook, you can't expect him to have 87 points this year. That's probably not going to happen. But I think Alex Newhook can do enough. And at the deadline or before the deadline, they'll have to decide whether or not they trust him to be the guy as the number 2 center going into the playoffs, or they can upgrade. I think Newhook's very much a part of the team's long-term plans, and they can just decide whether or not he's ready to take the step to be the number 2 center, which is a big role. So I'm really curious to see how that pans out. And I think the Evan Rodriguez signing was a good one. Like, this is a guy who can be a really good depth forward. And he's not a perfect player, but they're paying him $2 million, which is pretty cheap. And I think he's someone who's going to help this team win.
Oh, absolutely. And 2, it takes a minute I mean, not to bring Broncos into this by any means, but we're learning that it takes a second for new teams or for new players to adapt to these schemes. And so I think it's going to take Rodriguez just a little bit of extra time to kind of get adjusted and see, you know, how he fits and how his play will fit in with these lines. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think there was a ton of emotion, even if you weren't a part of the team last night, that you still probably felt the emotion being out there on the ice. So I'm really excited. I'm excited for tonight's game, because obviously the Flames are better than the Blackhawks, but I think this is going to be kind of a true test to see where the Avs are at tonight.
Go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun game to watch. Calgary's an awesome team. The playing against Kadri will be fun to watch. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, and talk about jump back into reality. Like all this emotion and all this excitement. And we're in the locker room and with Coach Bednar, and it's like, you know, Brendan McNicholas, you know, PR guru and stylist to the stars, is like, let's go. We got a plane to catch, which is actually literally and metaphorically where the Avalanche are. I mean, they literally had to get on a plane to fly to Calgary, and metaphorically, we got a plane to catch. We got new things. We're moving on. It's time to move, you know, forward. And so, listen, there's going to be some bumps in the road along the way. There was last year, too. Josh Manson didn't fit in right away. It took him some time. And don't forget, there were 4 moves made at the trade deadline last year. So there were players at this time last year who weren't part of the entire journey. We didn't know we didn't know about Lehkonen last year at this time. Not really. We didn't know about where Manson was going to be. Nico Sturm wasn't that big of a factor. But how about the presence of Andrew Cogliano, who wasn't with the team at this time last year, and his importance at the end of the day? So we're just on the beginning of that journey, and who knows who's going to join us along this ride. I kind of can't wait.
And we should give Nico Sturm some credit. He assisted an overtime winner in the playoffs, and he essentially scored the game-tying goal in Game 4. Technically, it went off Cogliano's leg and was credited to Cogliano. But that goal, who knows if that goal doesn't get scored, how that series winds up, because that game was 2-1 Lightning, and that goal essentially sent the game to overtime. So even if he didn't have as maybe consistent a presence in the lineup, I think he was still an important part of the team.
By the way, a nice tip of the cap, I thought, last night to Curtis McDermott to allow him to play and start. He didn't play 1 second in the playoffs. I thought he was a great teammate. He always worked very, very hard. He was waiting for an opportunity that didn't come. They did not have to start him last night. I don't know what kind of bigger role he's going to have, Peter, but it was great to see him on the ice last night. So that's good. I like that they rewarded a hardworking guy. They did, sit Anton Bleed. Bleed's probably going to play a lot more than McDermott. I'm not exactly sure what they do with Curtis throughout the course of the season, but I just thought it was cool last night that he was on the ice, he played and did all right. So good for McDermott, because I think Jeremy's a great guy. And I thought what he went through was kind of a unheralded role for the entire run.
Yeah, same with all the Ryan Murrays, that you need those guys who are good practice players, who are pushing guys to be at their best. That's what, I mean, the Avs had like really good players that they were scratching on any given night. And that speaks to a team's depth. It speaks to guys willing to fill in when needed. And it speaks to those guys having a good attitude. It would be so easy if you're not playing to kind of pout and not be in a good space. And from what I saw, whether it was Ryan Murray, whether it was Curtis McDermott, whether it was Nicholas Aube-Kubel when he was getting scratched, whether it was Andre Burakovsky got scratched a few times.
That's right.
And instead of kind of checking out and saying, well, I'm leaving here in free agency, I'm done with this, they're not playing me. When he got back in the lineup, he was really good and scored an overtime winner in one of the biggest games of the season. So I think that those roles, while unheralded, are very important.
Well, a good, exciting night last night, but we look forward to the next run for this Colorado Avalanche team. Peter, appreciate your time. We cannot wait to read your book when it comes out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, we do have to tell you guys about an awesome opportunity with the Redline Athletics Centennial. For your student athlete, definitely have them check out the brand new state-of-the-art speed and agility training facility. It is the ultimate spot for your student athlete to take it to the next level. Check out denverfan.com as we bring in Chad Andrus, the winner of our King Supers Pick'em League this week. So, Chad, I know we only have you for a few minutes, so Don't mind my helmet over here. I think I'm rocking it pretty well. But Chad, tell us, what are you buying from King Soopers? Because I'm so jealous of the gift card you're about to get.
Oh, it's so incredibly boring. I don't know if DMAC maybe can remember back a few years and relate to this, but Rachel, maybe at some point in your future, you will know the pain of having to buy kid lunches and kid snacks for school, because we spend so much money on that every single month for groceries. Any relief is more than welcome. So I hate to be boring. I hate to be the party pooper, but it's probably going to be things like fruit strips or puffs or Cheetos or something like that.
You know, I also eat those things. I'm still a Lunchable girl. That's going to make me sound really young, and everyone's probably going to come at me, but I totally get it, even though I don't have kids. But I'm glad that King Soopers is able to help you and your family out tonight. But now we need to know who you picking for Thursday night football.
Oh man, can I pick the Avs Flames over instead of a winner in this game?
I feel you.
Apparently Carson Wentz is like the best Thursday night football quarterback ever. But I'm not going to get sucked into that. I think he is a little injured. I think there's a lot more controversy, even though that team should be used to it by now. Just give me the home team in the lesser of two evils. I'm going to go with the Bears simply because they're at home, and there's really no other logic behind it.
I feel that. I heard the winds are going to be crazy coming off the lake, but Chad, appreciate the time, and huge shout out to King Soopers. Like I said, I'm jealous of your gift card, but we will catch up with you later.
All right, have a good day, guys.
Thanks. Chad Andrews winning our King Soopers pick'em. You can play at pick'em. Check out denverfan.com. I'm so jealous. Poor Chad. He was frozen in time right there. Yeah. So this is a kid's helmet for anybody too. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of realizing that my head may not exactly fit into a kid helmet all the time because I'm kind of getting a headache in here.
By the way, I loved it when we were talking about deep emotional things, and you were trying to look like Rich Karlis from the early 80s, the kicker for the Broncos. So I love, oh, it's so emotional. It was all this. And Rachel looks like a bobblehead.
Is a bobblehead a toy, DMAC?
The helmet is cool as hell.
It's awesome. It's so cool. It like cuts off my eyebrows though, so I feel like maybe I would look better like this. One way or the other. Okay, well, we're moving on because Russell Wilson's former teammate KJ Wright had some things to say when he joined Seattle Sports. This is really interesting. We've got 3 different clips that we're going to play for you here, but here's what it's like to be a teammate of Russell Wilson's. Take a listen.
I would say one thing that Russ wish he got better was connecting with his guys. I believe that when you talk about brotherhood, it's always been about balling. And so whenever we talk, I don't want to hear like I'm talking to CBS or NBC. This is man to man, brother to brother. We chilling in the steam room. Hey, let me know you. Let me have your heart, man. Let me have your heart on this one. And so I don't know why he had his guard up, but it was just unfortunate that when you would try to connect, try to communicate, it was kind of hard. It was kind of hard.
It's kind of hard to hear this. And the more and more I hear about Russell Wilson, the more and more DMAC I'm starting to really feel empathetic towards him, because it just seems like he's put himself in such a corner that he can't connect with anyone. And
yeah,
that's tough to go through life. I know he's got a bunch of people around him, but if he doesn't truly open and feel connected to all of them, life could feel pretty alone, and that's a hard way to go through it.
It really feels like that, Rachel. And he even put out, it's awesome to see him at the Children's Hospital, and he put out another tweet today that just you wonder, like, are you okay? Like, and so I feel you too. I am empathetic as well. It's one thing to be critical where criticism is deserved, and that's play on the field. But when a guy is constantly showing that he's really going through some sort of painful time right now, and I don't know how else you can interpret what he's putting out on social media except for that. Mm-hmm. And I am kind of wondering why he's even doing that. Like, when you reach out on social media about going through a dark time or needing some help, it's a cry. I'm starting to just feel bad for him on a human level, Rachel.
Me too.
So But then you get to the other side of things, Rachel. It's like, well, I mean, you do make all this money. You did put this on yourself. You do put yourself out there in all sorts of other ways, and it's just not adding up. It's just not good enough. Listen, he doesn't have to follow my advice, Rachel, but I would sort of back off from all the public statements. I would sort of back off from all the Broncos country let's ride phoniness, and just sort of be more real and maybe a little bit more quiet, and just sort of, hey, rally around with the people that are close to you.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I can't identify what it's like to be him or what he's necessarily going through, but I know when I go through some difficult times, occasionally I will share some things out there, but in general, Rachel, I just turn to my friends and my family, and I'm lucky enough to be able to have close friends and family that I can sort of lean on. And and there's nothing wrong, by the way, for going to get professional help too, if that's what you need. To me, Rachel, it's like, wow, we are having these real conversations about him because of the messages that he's putting out there. And so I am feeling empathetic. It's funny that you bring up that word. I feel actually somewhat the same. And when you hear KJ Wright, who was a teammate with him for 10 years, talk about the guy unable to connect with teammates over a decade, wow, man, that's hard to hear.
Yeah, let's listen to this clip. KJ talking about how his teammates didn't necessarily like Russ. Take a listen.
When he first came on the scene, he was just always laser focused. Everything is all about ball. I want to be the best at this, best at that. But man, like no one cares. Like we care how good of a football player you are. But man, I want we want to be boys. We want to be brothers. I want to be at your wedding. I want to talk to be how your kids are doing and all that stuff. And so, unfortunately, like his character's coming to question. People are starting to pick up on, man, this kind of unauthentic. Like, let me have your heart. Let me know who you really are versus just the pitch perfect. I do everything right, say everything right. Messing up is okay. Saying like, hey, I'm struggling in this area is okay. And so, never really got that. And I believe that Russ would tell you himself, I wish that I connected more with my boys.
Which we've seen a lot more of. You know, we saw Russ taking the team or players on the team out to dinner, to going to the events. We saw him, and I believe it was the offensive line when they went to celebrate with the Stanley Cup. So you're seeing more of that. But is it true? Is this a look? Is it wanting to be closer to them? Was coming to the Broncos the fresh start for Russell Wilson and, you know, maybe getting out of what they call a toxic relationship, but now it's almost backfiring?
Yeah, is it a checklist or is it genuine?
Yeah.
And, you know, is it like, oh, once a month I need to take these guys out to dinner? It's just like, oh, well, I have to do like 100 push-ups today, or oh, I have to pay the gas bill. You know,
and there's no way you can make $245 million compared to some of your teammates who may make 10 and not pick up the check, right?
No, it all goes like that. So, you know, it feels to me like Russell Wilson needs somebody in his life that is not asking anything from Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Rachel. Listen, if everything was going well and they were winning games, this would not even be a topic. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
But they're not. And it's not only are they losing games, it's kind of how they're losing the games. And then you look around the rest of the NFL and you see, well, this guy's doing all right and that guy's doing all right. And you say, well, are you one of those guys or not? Yeah. So here we go. There's another test on Monday night, Rachel, in against the Chargers. And it was in the 2012 season when the Broncos were 2-3 with Peyton Manning, and they played the Chargers. And it was a breakthrough moment, and it was on Monday Night Football. I mean, all those things are bizarrely leading up to kind of a similar type of moment. It was the key for a turnaround for the Broncos in 2012. And maybe, Rachel, 10 years later, it can be the key for them to turn around. We all want it to happen. The concept that we're out to get Russ or we want Russ to fail is absolutely absurd. What we're trying to do is figure this out. What we're trying to do is see where it gets positive and where this thing is going to change, because the hype's been unbelievable.
I know. And I don't think this season things will necessarily change drastically. But I also can say that I do not believe that Russell Wilson in the next 7 years that he's going to be a Denver Bronco, that we're not going to see a playoff team at some point. So I
Oh
say
my
we
God.
face it.
Oh my God. You're giving me a heart attack. 7 years. I mean, in 7 years, theoretically, with Russell Wilson, you should have at least 2 Super Bowl championships. Never. You're talking about like we'll
I
get
mean,
to the playoffs.
I don't
7
think they're
years.
making the playoffs this year. Are you
Seems
picking them to
unlikely.
win against
Hey,
the Chargers come Monday night?
Rachel, I'm with you, man. I mean, like, they got 3 games before their bye week. You want to talk about tricky. What do you do with this team, Coach Hackett and everybody, if you're 2-6 at the bye? So you've got the Chargers who have a very poor defense. They have a very good offense, a very poor defense.
Yep.
Then you got the Jets who, the Jets just put 40 points up against the Dolphins. And then you have the, you don't know what to make of them, Jaguars. They look great, and then they look terrible. And that game's in England. Rachel, you got to win at least one of those games to feel like Hackett's got good job security. You probably have to win 2 of those 3 games, Rachel, to still stay in the, hey, we're going to make the playoff conversation. You win all 3
Is that
games,
conversation even still happening?
Yeah, listen, if you win all 3 games, this train is chugging. We're doing awesome. You win all 3 games going to bye, home run. But Rachel, if you lose all 3 games, you might find a case where Nathaniel Hackett sets a record and the earliest one and done season of all time. Because what is the point of Nathaniel Hackett and good chunks of his coaching staff if they can't make it work at all through 8 games? What are we doing here? And unfortunately, that's a real conversation for Greg Penner and Rob Walton to have amongst each other because they didn't hire Hackett. Hackett was hired by George Payton under a previous administration. Yep. This administration gave Russell Wilson the contract, but they're not beholden to Coach Hackett. And frankly, Rachel, they're not beholden to George Payton either.
Yeah, true. And the $20 million that they have to pay Hackett for him to leave is, that's nothing for the Walton Penner ownership group.
That's like spilled milk in aisle 15 at a super Walmart. I mean, who cares? That's like nothing. $20 million for them is literally nothing.
Pay and get out, figure out something else.
Sure. The thing with coaches' contracts, Rachel, it's just cash. It doesn't count against the salary cap. As long as you've got the cash to pay it, you can move on from coaches at will. The problem for the Broncos in the past is actually cash was a problem. And just having $20 million disposable dollars was an issue. Theoretically, that is not the case for the Waltons. It's not a great way. Yeah, it's not a great way to run a business, but what do they care? They just dropped like $4.6 billion. They're probably doing significant research about what new stadium they can build. I mean, seriously, who cares? Oh, this didn't work out. Wasn't our idea in the first place. They hired Damani Leach as the president of business, president of the Broncos. Well, he didn't have anything to do with George Payton, and he didn't have anything to do with Nathaniel Hackett. No, this is wild, but it's easy for this new ownership group to move on if they don't like what's going on.
Oh, it gives me anxiety even thinking about it. Robert said, do we see a change in the offensive playbook, more under the center?
You should. And the whole let Russ cook thing is a bunch of garbage.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll knows what he's doing. He's a smart football guy. They weren't trying to put Russ in a bad spot. They were trying to win with Russ. Peter King suggested in his Monday Morning Quarterback article that they need to go back and look as what worked with Russell Wilson and implement those things rather than trying to make Russ something that he wishes he could be, that he's not. No. That's a great question, great point. You've got to go back to the things that worked well and do those, because those essentially were, as we're finding out, the right things to do.
Oh, gosh, I have anxiety thinking about it. All right. Well, we did get a comment that says, Rachel, you're going to have to show us the Peyton Manning red forehead when you pry that phone off. Let's do it. Oh.
Let's go, Rach.
Oh, yeah, it's there. It's there. Oh, man. I will say, kids' helmets, I'm like, you got a headache now. D-Mac, Which side of the ball are you most concerned about come Monday night? Is it the offense or is it the defense? Look at that. Look at that.
It'll be a test. Like I said, the Chargers offense is pretty good, really good.
Yep.
And their defense is pretty poor. So theoretically, Rachel, we should see something like a 27-24 game. It should be something along those lines. But that means you've got to score 24 points or 27 points if you're the Broncos. So somehow you've got to prove that you can actually score touchdowns. And we've seen the defense stop teams. What we haven't seen is scoring from the Broncos. So I guess what concerns me the most is seeing something we haven't seen before, and that's the ability to score, and specifically touchdowns. Rachel, they're 31st in scoring in the league and 32nd in red zone touchdown scoring. They're the worst team in the league in the red zone, and they're the second worst team to putting points up. So that becomes obviously the most concerning element.
The Broncos defense, though, is so banged up.
Yeah.
So banged up that listen, I remember I was listening to you and you and Derek, and I'm trying to think, I think I was headed for Thursday night, the game on Thursday night. And you guys were talking about how like there's a reason you pay your starters so much money and the backups don't get as much because they don't have the talent. Not saying that they're not talented. Like, let's make that very clear. They're still NFL players.
That's the fallacy of next man up. That's why that cliche next man up is bizarrely bogus. But go ahead.
It's stupid.
Well, I mean, it's just the you shouldn't have the same expectations
for somebody who makes $20 million less than the other.
Yeah, man. I mean, just think about anybody's workplace, okay? Who do you have more expectations for? The guy that's making $100 an hour or the guy that's making $20 an hour?
Who do we have more high expectations for, DMAC or myself?
Me!
You get all the pressure. I'll let you have it.
How much money are you making, Rachel? I don't know. Well, maybe we got.
I don't have kids, so I don't need the King Supers money, I guess. Although it's my dog's birthday today, and I've spent $100 on dog birthday presents.
So clearly we should have higher expectations for you than me, because I'm not spending $100 on my cats for anything.
Dogs and cats, though, totally different. Totally different.
Yeah, that's true. But I wouldn't. Hey, listen, your dog had a birthday, and you spent $100 on your dog.
So here's the thing, though. Okay.
I
bought like when you were a kid, I don't know if this ever happened to you, and you got like socks or like a pack of white t-shirts because it was like an easy gift that you already need. Your parents were like, you need these things, but like it's a perfect example of times to give it to you.
Every Christmas for my grandparents on my dad's side, socks and underwear.
Okay, so that's what I did for my dog. I was like, you really need these things because it's going to make my life easier if you get them. So it's the perfect example. But she is getting a cute little cake thing, but that's like $7. So
I'm sorry. Stop. You're buying a cake for your dog for your dog's birthday?
Absolutely. Are you kidding? DMAC, do you want to see this cake? It's a cookie. It's a sweet potato cake cookie. I'll show it to you.
You realize who's having the birthday, Rachel? You.
Yeah, but she's my baby, so it's totally fine.
No. I get it. By the way, same advice for everybody who has. Well, I mean, yeah, that's darling. Yeah,
Thank you.
That's yours. You realize that's for you.
It's for my picture. Yeah,
you're getting that for yourself. And by the way, anybody who has a 1-year-old or 2-year-old birthday party, you just want to drink. It's not for the kid. The kid has no memory of it. The dog does not realize. You realize your dog does not realize how old the dog is, right? She doesn't know.
That's totally fine with me. That's totally fine. She'll be ecstatic to have a different sort of treat, though. Like
she'll be ecstatic to she'll be excited to sniff another dog's butt out there in the park, today. And she'll be ecstatic about everything.
Pretty much.
The degree of ecstaticness is not relative to her.
Do you know what she's not ecstatic about, though? her little booties for her for her birthday present because she can't walk in them, and it is the funniest thing in the world. But she's not ecstatic about that one. So she'll be ecstatic about the dog sweet potato.
Clearly, if we're going to the world of somebody who has too much money, Rachel, we're barreling down your path. So I wish you're the best with your dog's birthday party. I tell your dog I'm sorry I forgot. I'll send a card later.
Listen, but this is because I don't have kids. I know once you have kids, I watched her happen with my sister. She loved her dog, still loves her dog, but now she has 3 daughters.
Hey, Rachel, let's make it clear. I'm also ripping on people that have birthday parties for their 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds. Okay,
that's true.
Once the kid.
What do you think of people who say my kid is 18 months old or my kid's 24 months old?
Yeah, that's stupid. Your kid's a year old or 2 years old or 3 years old or 4 years old. I'm not walking around telling everybody I'm 53 and a half. Hey, Rachel, I'm 1,243 months old.
Wow.
And by the way, there's no way I did that math. I have no idea. Hey, Jake Shapiro, really quick. If I'm 1,243 months old, how old am I? Because there's no way I got close to that. There's no way. How old would I be if I was 1,243 months old?
Over 100.
Times divided by 12, I guess would be the way. I'd be over 100. I'd be over 100.
It would be over 100. Okay, D-Mac and I, we stayed up way too late last night. We're hitting delirious mode. Jake does have the answer for us because he always does. 85 for 1,000.
Oh.
1,023, but you just said 12. You just said 1,000.
I don't know what I said.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Like
D-Mac and I were tired. We partied last night. The Avs game was such a blast. They get the win 5-2 over the Blackhawks. They raise the banner. It all begins again. I am gone tomorrow. Will Peterson, Cecil hanging out with everybody here on Coffee Break. Make sure you send them some love, and we'll see you all on Monday as we get ready for the Broncos to take on the Chargers for Monday Night Football. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.